I took 8 blades meant for a child I barely knew, and in the darkness that followed, I discovered that dying was not the end of my story, but the beginning. They say a wolf knows her mate by scent alone, but I learned mine through blood, through sacrifice, through the desperate choice to stand between death and an innocent soul. My name is Ophelia, and for 23 years, I lived as the shame of the Thornwood Pack. While other she-wolves ran beneath the moon, their bodies shifting into magnificent beasts of fur and fang, I remained trapped in human skin. My wolf slumbered somewhere deep inside me, silent as a grave, deaf to every full moon that called to my kind. The elders whispered that I was cursed. My mother wept in secret, lighting candles at the moon shrine and begging the goddess for a miracle that never came. My father stopped meeting my eyes years ago, as though my failure to shift was a wound he could not bear to examine. I was his only daughter, and I had broken something in him that could never be repaired. The healers examined me countless times throughout my childhood. They pressed their hands to my chest and searched for the spark of the wolf, and every time they pulled away with furrowed brows and careful words. "She is there," they would say. "Your wolf exists, but she sleeps too deeply for us to reach. Perhaps one day, perhaps never. Learn to live with uncertainty, child. It is the only honest advice we can give." So I learned. I learned to smile when my peers shifted for the first time, their joy so bright it burned. I learned to celebrate at mating ceremonies I would never have. I learned to make myself useful in ways that did not require fur or fangs, and eventually, I found my place among the children. The nursery dens of Thornwood became my sanctuary. I taught the pups their letters and histories, watched their clumsy first transformations with joy untainted by envy. They loved me not despite my weakness, but because I was safe, soft, forever in the form they understood best. I braided their hair and dried their tears and taught them that strength comes in many shapes, even as I struggled to believe it myself. The little ones called me Miss Ophelia, and they fought over who would sit closest to me during story time. And in their innocent affection, I found a reason to keep breathing. Among my students that autumn was a boy named Phelan. He arrived without ceremony on a gray morning when the first frost had silvered the grass. A stern-faced guardian brought him to my classroom, offered no explanation beyond his name, and departed with a warning look that I did not understand. Phelan was perhaps 7 years old, with hair black as raven wings and eyes the color of ancient gold. He rarely spoke, but when he did, his words carried weight beyond his years. He watched everything with an intensity that seemed wrong in a child so young. He trusted no one. He flinched when the other pups grew too loud, and he always positioned himself near the exits as though calculating escape routes. I recognized that wariness. I had seen it in the eyes of wolves who had survived things no one should survive. So I gave him space. I gave him patience. I let him observe from the edges of the classroom until curiosity drew him closer. I noticed that he liked stories about brave wolves who protected the weak. I noticed that he drew pictures of forests he had never seen, always with a white wolf standing guard among the trees. I noticed that he watched me with something like hope when he thought I was not looking. Slowly, over weeks of patient kindness, he began to sit closer to me during lessons. He began to smile, small and tentative, like a flower testing whether it was safe to bloom. One afternoon, when the other children had gone to their napping mats, he approached my desk with a folded piece of paper. "This is for you, Miss Ophelia," he said, "because you are nice to me even though you do not have to be." I unfolded the paper and found a drawing of 2 figures. One was clearly me, with my long brown hair and the green dress I often wore. The other was a small black wolf with golden eyes. We were holding hands, or rather, I was holding his paw. Above us, he had written in careful letters, "My favorite teacher." I did not cry in front of him. I waited until he had joined the others for nap time, and then I pressed that paper to my heart and let the tears fall. I did not know who he truly was. I did not know that his guardian was a royal sentinel, that his silence was trained into him for survival, that those golden eyes marked him as heir to the greatest alpha bloodline in 5 generations. To me, he was simply Phelan, a lonely boy who needed someone to see him, and I was determined to be that someone. The day that changed everything began with unusual warmth for late autumn. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks, and the children were restless with energy they could not contain. I had planned an outing to Ashenmoor Forest, where the pups could practice tracking scents among the fallen leaves. The other teachers thought I was foolish to venture so far with 12 young ones in my care, but I had made this trip many times before. The forest was safe. The patrols kept it so. 12 pups followed me down the winding path, their laughter echoing through the golden trees. Phelan walked beside me with his small hand occasionally brushing mine, and each accidental touch made something warm bloom in my chest. He was beginning to trust me. He was beginning to heal. The forest was golden and red, the air sweet with decay and renewal, and I remembered thinking that perhaps this was enough. Perhaps a life of small joys and borrowed purpose was not such a terrible fate. Perhaps I did not need to shift to matter. The first arrow sang past my ear before I registered the danger. It buried itself in a tree trunk inches from my head, the shaft still quivering. For one frozen moment, I simply stared at it, my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. Then the screaming began. They came from the shadows like nightmares given flesh, 8 warriors in the black and silver of the Shadowfang pack. Our ancient enemies, wolves who believed that power was taken, never given, and that the throne of Thornwood rightfully belonged to their bloodline. I did not understand why they were here, why they had ventured so deep into our territory, why they would risk war for a group of children. Then I saw where their eyes focused, saw the hungry recognition in their faces, and ice flooded my veins. They were looking at Phelan. The children screamed, high and terrified, the sound of innocence confronting evil for the first time. I shoved the nearest pups toward the tree line, my voice cutting through their panic. Run! Find the patrol! Howl for help! Do not look back! Do not stop for anything! Run! They ran, 11 small bodies crashing through the underbrush, their fear giving them speed. But Phelan stood frozen beside me, those golden eyes wide with a terror that told me he had seen violence before. Somewhere in his short life, he had learned that death wore familiar faces. He knew what these wolves wanted. He knew what would happen if they caught him. I grabbed his shoulders and forced him to look at me. I need you to run, Phelan. I need you to run faster than you have ever run and not stop until you reach the pack house. Can you do that for me? I cannot leave you, he whispered. They will hurt you. The first warrior shifted mid-stride, his wolf form massive and scarred from countless battles. He lunged for the boy with jaws that could crush bone, and there was no more time for words. I did not think. I did not calculate my chances or mourn my limitations. I simply moved, placing my fragile human body between monster and child, and I felt those teeth tear through my shoulder like paper. The pain was extraordinary. White-hot and absolute, it dropped me to my knees even as I twisted to keep Phelan behind me. Blood soaked my dress, my hands, the golden leaves beneath us. The warrior shifted back to human form, laughing at my futile resistance. He drew a blade from his belt, and it gleamed with something dark and oily. Poison. Wolfsbane concentrate, I would later learn. Enough to kill an alpha in minutes. To a human, to a wolf who could not shift, it was certain death. Move aside, little human, he said, his smile revealing teeth still stained with my blood. We only want the prince. Give him to us, and you can crawl back to your broken life. Resist, and I will make your death last hours. Prince. The word echoed strangely in my mind, but I had no time to examine it. Phelan was the prince. Phelan was the heir to Thornwood, and these monsters wanted to kill a 7-year-old boy to hurt his father. "No," I said. The word came out steady despite the agony radiating from my shoulder. I did not recognize my own voice. It was harder than I had ever heard it, cold with a fury I did not know I possessed. The warrior's smile faded. He had expected me to beg. He had expected me to break. Instead, I rose on shaking legs, put my arms out wide, and became a wall between death and the child I had sworn to protect. "So be it," he said, and the blade came down. I caught it on my forearm, feeling it slice to bone, and I did not let go. The poison burned where it entered my blood, but I did not let go. The warrior snarled in surprise and wrenched the blade free, striking again before I could recover. My side, my thigh, my back as I curled around Phelan like a dying star collapsing around its last light. 8 wounds, 8 doorways for poison to enter my blood. I felt it burning through me like liquid fire, felt my heartbeat stutter and slow, felt the world growing dark at the edges. But I did not move. I did not fall. I would not give them Phelan. Somewhere distant, I heard howling. Not the children, but something larger, something ancient and furious. The ground trembled with approaching thunder. The warrior above me hesitated, his blade raised for a 9th strike that would surely end me. And then he was simply gone. Torn away by a blur of white fur and silver eyes, a wolf larger than any I had ever seen, whose snarl shook the very trees and sent birds screaming into the sky. More wolves poured into the clearing, 12, 24. The elite guard of Thornwood in their battle forms, their fury a living thing that transformed the forest into a killing ground. The battle was brief and brutal. I heard bones breaking, heard screams cut short, heard the wet sounds of justice delivered without mercy. But I could not see any of it. My vision had narrowed to a single point of light, and even that was fading. Ophelia. Phelan's voice, very small, very close. His hands on my face, warm and wet with my blood. "Ophelia, please. Please do not leave me. You promised you would not leave me." I had never made that promise aloud, but I had made it in my heart. Every time he smiled at me, every time he trusted me with another piece of his wounded soul. I wanted to tell him that I would never leave, that I would always protect him, that some bonds transcend even death. But the darkness was too heavy, too hungry, and I let it take me down into silence. I woke to pain and warmth and a scent that rewrote everything I understood about myself. Pine and winter storms, wood smoke and authority. Something wild and ancient that called to a part of me I had never known existed. A part that stirred now for the first time in 23 years of silence. My wolf. She was awake. She was howling inside my chest, howling a single word over and over again with joy that bordered on madness. Mate. 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 I opened my eyes to a room I did not recognize. All dark wood and rich furs, candles burning low on every surface. Tapestries depicting the history of Thornwood covered the walls, showing great wolves running beneath full moons, showing battles won and kingdoms built. My body was wrapped in bandages that smelled of healing herbs, and beneath them I could feel the strange heat of accelerated healing, something that should have been impossible for a wolf who could not shift. But none of that mattered, because he was there. He sat in a chair beside my bed, close enough to touch, and he was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Not because of his size, though he was massive, all broad shoulders and warrior's muscle beneath a simple black shirt. Not because of the crown of silver thorns that rested on his black hair, marking him as the Alpha King of Thornwood, but because of his eyes, pale as winter moons, and the way they looked at me as though I were the answer to a question he had been asking his entire life. "You are awake," he said, and his voice was deep and rough. a sound that vibrated through my injured body and made my wolf whimper with longing. The healers said the poison should have killed you within minutes. You fought it for 3 days. 3 days you lay here, burning with fever, and you did not give up. 3 days. I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry, too raw from disuse. He was already moving, lifting a cup of water to my lips with hands that could crush stone yet cradled the cup like something infinitely precious. I drank, feeling the cool water soothe my ravaged throat, and when I finished, I found my voice. Phelan. Is he safe? Please tell me he is safe. Something shifted in those silver eyes. Something warm and wondering. Something that looked almost like reverence. My son is unharmed thanks to you. He has not left the hallway outside this room since we brought you here. He refuses to sleep in his own chambers. He refuses to eat unless the servants bring his meals here so he can sit outside your door. He says he is standing guard until you wake up. Tears burned my eyes. That brave, wounded little boy, keeping vigil for a teacher who had only ever shown him kindness. His son, the Prince of Thornwood, the heir to the Alpha throne. I had thrown myself before blades for the child of the most powerful wolf in the realm, and I had not even known. I am Orion, he continued, though he needed no introduction. Every wolf knew the Alpha King, knew his legend, knew that he had taken the throne at 19 after killing the corrupt Alpha who had ruled before, knew that he had spent 12 years building Thornwood into the strongest pack on the continent, knew that he had never taken a Luna, despite countless offerings from noble families desperate for alliance with his bloodline. And you are Ophelia, the teacher who cannot shift, who threw her human body against 8 Shadowfang assassins and refused to fall. Shame heated my cheeks despite my weakness. Of course he knew my flaw. Everyone did. I was famous for my failure. I am sorry, Alpha. I know I am not worthy to be in your presence. I only wanted to protect the child. I did not know who he was. I would have done the same for any of them. That, he said, leaning closer until his scent overwhelmed me, until my wolf was clawing at my insides, desperate to reach him, is precisely why you are worthy. His hand rose, hovering near my face without touching, as though asking permission for something sacred. When you bled for my son, your blood called to me across miles. I felt you dying. I felt my wolf tear free of my control and run faster than I have ever run, because he knew. Because I knew. He had waited for you. We both had. His fingers finally brushed my cheek, and the touch sent lightning through my veins. You are my mate, Ophelia, my Luna. The other half of my soul that I have searched for since I first shifted beneath the moon. I should have argued. I should have explained that I was broken, incomplete, unfit to stand beside a king. The council would never accept me. The other packs would see me as weakness. Everything I had been told about my place in the world screamed that this was impossible. But my wolf was singing for the first time in my life, and his touch was healing something inside me that had been wounded long before the Shadowfang blades. And when he leaned down to press his forehead against mine, I breathed him in and felt myself become whole. The days that followed were a strange blend of recovery and revelation. My wounds healed with impossible speed, the mate bond accelerating a process that my dormant wolf had never been able to manage alone. I was moved to chambers adjoining Orion's own, rooms that had stood empty since his Luna had died, waiting for a queen who was never supposed to be someone like me. Phelan visited constantly, crawling into my bed to read beside me, falling asleep with his head on my shoulder while I stroked his dark hair. He told me about his mother, the previous Luna, who had died bringing him into the world. He had never known her face except from paintings, never heard her voice except in the stories others told. He told me about the years of hiding, of moving between safe houses, of never being allowed to tell anyone his real name. But I can tell you, he said one evening, his golden eyes bright in the candlelight, because you are going to be my new mother. Father said so. He said, "You are the one the moon chose for us." I looked up to find Orion in the doorway, his expression soft in a way I had never seen on the fearsome Alpha King. He did not deny his son's words. He simply crossed to the bed, lifted Phelan into his arms, and sat beside me with his child between us. In that moment, I understood what family truly meant. But our peace was not to last. The Shadowfang attack had been only the beginning. Their alpha, a brutal wolf named Pyrrhus, had ruled through fear and violence for decades, and his hatred for Thornwood was legendary. The failed assassination of Phelan had cost him 8 of his best warriors. But more than that, it had cost him face before the other packs. He could not allow such a defeat to stand. Word came on a frozen morning 3 weeks after I woke. A scout arrived at the palace gates, bloodied and barely conscious, bearing news that turned Orion's face to stone. Shadowfang was marching. Not a raiding party, not assassins in the night, but a full army. Pyrrhus meant to end the war that had simmered between our packs for generations, and he meant to do it by tearing Thornwood apart. The palace erupted into chaos. Warriors were summoned from every corner of the territory. Weapons were distributed, battle plans drawn, prayers offered to the moon goddess for victory. I watched Orion prepare for war and felt my heart crack along old fault lines. This was the life of a Luna, to wait while her mate rode to battle, to pray for his safe return, to be strong for the pack while its alpha was away. But I was not made for waiting. I had never been made for waiting. "Take me with you," I said, catching his arm as he strapped on his battle leathers. "I cannot fight in wolf form, but I can help with the wounded. I trained as a healer before I became a teacher. I can be useful. Please, Orion, do not leave me behind to wonder if you are alive or dead." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the war in his eyes between the instinct to protect and the understanding that I was not a delicate thing to be sheltered. I had taken 8 blades for his son. I had refused to die when every odd was against me. Perhaps he was beginning to understand that keeping me safe and keeping me caged were not the same thing. "If anything happens to you, I will burn the world," he said finally. "Do you understand? The bond is not complete, but you are already everything to me. Everything. Then make sure nothing happens to either of us." The Battle of Ashenmoor was chaos and blood and the screaming of wolves. I worked in the healers' tents at the rear of the army, binding wounds and holding hands and singing the old songs to those who would not survive until dawn. The ground shook with the clash of armies. The air stank of copper and fear. And through it all, I felt Orion through the bond, felt his fury and his focus, felt every blow he took and dealt. Then I felt him fall. The pain exploded through my chest like a physical blow. I gasped, doubling over, knocking supplies from the table in front of me. The other healers rushed to my side, but I pushed them away. Something was terribly wrong. Orion was hurt. Orion was dying. I could feel his life force flickering like a candle in a storm, and something inside me that had slept for 23 years finally woke up. The shift was agony and ecstasy combined. Every bone in my body broke and reformed. My skin split and knitted back together as fur the color of new snow pushed through. I screamed, and the scream became a howl, and then I was running on 4 legs through a forest painted red with moonlight and blood. I did not know where I was going. I did not need to know. The bond pulled me forward, a golden thread connecting my heart to his, and I followed it through the chaos of battle. I found him surrounded. Pyrrhus and his lieutenants had separated Orion from his warriors, had wounded him with those same poisoned blades that had nearly killed me. My mate stood on shaking legs, silver eyes dimming, refusing to fall even as his blood painted the snow beneath him. He was magnificent even in defeat, a king who would not kneel, a wolf who would die on his feet. Pyrrhus laughed, circling his wounded prey. The great Alpha King, brought low at last. "I will mount your head on my wall and take your territory for my own." "And that broken little human you claimed as Luna?" I will make her watch before I let my wolves have their fill of her." He never saw me coming. I hit him from the side with all the force my new body possessed. We rolled through the bloody snow, all teeth and claws and fury. He was larger than me, stronger than me, a warrior born and bred for killing. But I had spent my whole life being underestimated. I had spent my whole life being told I was not enough. I was enough to sink my teeth into his throat and not let go. Pyrrhus thrashed beneath me, his claws tearing at my sides, but I did not release him. I bit deeper, tasting his blood, feeling his struggles grow weaker. His lieutenants tried to pull me away, but Orion found the strength to rise, to throw himself at them with the last of his power. And then our warriors broke through, surrounding us, finishing what we had started. When Pyrrhus finally went still beneath me, I released his throat and stood over his body. My white fur stained crimson. The Shadowfang wolves who remained alive fled into the darkness. The battle was over. We had won. Orion shifted back to human form, his wounds still bleeding, his face pale with blood loss. But his eyes, those beautiful silver eyes, blazed with pride and wonder as he looked at me. He tried to speak, but his legs gave out, and I was there to catch him, my wolf form large enough to support his weight. "My Luna," he breathed against my fur. "My impossible, magnificent Luna." The coronation was held on the first day of spring, when the snows had melted and the forest was coming back to life. I wore a gown the color of moonlight and a crown of silver thorns that matched my mate's. Phelan stood between us, his small hand clasped in mine, his smile brighter than I had ever seen it. The whole pack had gathered to witness the ceremony, to welcome their new Luna, to see the impossible made real. When the High Priestess asked if I would accept the bond, accept the responsibilities of Luna, accept Orion as my mate for all eternity, my voice did not waver. "I do," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. The pack howled their acceptance, and I felt their voices echo in my blood, felt the bond that connected me to each and every one of them. I was no longer the broken wolf who could not shift. I was Luna Ophelia, mate of Alpha King Orion, mother to Prince Phelan, protector of Thornwood. And as my mate marked me beneath the full moon that night, as our bond sealed with a power that shook the very forest, I understood at last that I had never been broken at all. I had simply been waiting for a child to protect, waiting for a love to find me, waiting for the moment when my wolf would wake and show me who I was always meant to be. They say a wolf knows her mate by scent alone, but I learned mine through blood, through sacrifice, through the desperate choice to stand between death and an innocent soul. And I would make that choice again, 1,000 times, for the family I found in the ashes of who I used to be. The moon had always been watching over me. I simply needed to learn how to see her light.